unlock forgiveness of sin, but he unlocks life after death for us. And frankly, this is a part that a lot of Christians, this is the part that they want to add. Do everything else that I'm doing and add getting to go to heaven forever and ever. It's a thing that requires faith. It's a thing that Rosetta thought about and talked about. And it's a thing that we think about and we talk about. We are betting our lives on this. He unlocks forgiveness of sins and life after death. Jesus can unlock eternal life. He said in John 10:10, I came that they might have life and have it abundantly. And I think he's talking about there and then, but I also think he's talking about here and now. And sometimes we forget that. Have you ever heard of Christians or met Christians or been a Christ follower who has focused kind of on the there and then? Someday, somehow, maybe this will work out, but for now it's just all bad and it's all. He unlocks here and now life and joy and peace. And when somebody gets to that place where they say, hey, it's kind of become unmanageable. It's become unmanageable and I want better for this. He's right there in the form of people to help, people that know him. I've told you this before and it's worth saying again. I think it is. And I doubt that you'll interrupt me, so here we go. I feel most loved by God when because you say you love God, you love me. There are times when I feel most loved by God because you say you love him, you love me. You step in and you ask, or you help, or you're concerned, and it's genuine and it's real, and you help in real ways. Then God's love has a tangibility to it, has skin on, and I can feel it. There are other times when you've been by yourself with the Bible or praying to God that you felt his love, but man, in some powerful ways, when we love each other and when we love those people that we meet, we get to see God at work in a life. Knowing Jesus unlocks joy. He said, and Paul will talk about this later, that there's joy that is there in knowing him. There's an effervescence in life. You know how champagne has the bubbles? I hope you don't know a lot about it, but it does. There's an effervescence with that. There's supposed to be kind of a cork pop each day when you get up. There's supposed to be a sound that says today has potential. Today has possibility because there are going to be other people in it. There are going to be opportunities in it. And we shouldn't be the people that go around that are constantly look like we're sad, or we were just told that, you know, your 401k tanked again, or whatever it is. We ought to be full of joy because we are Christ followers. In the middle of getting the tar beat out of them, Paul and Silas in the city of Philippi, at midnight, they're singing hymns of praise to God. That has been something I've shared privately with some of you, but the key for me in some ways to get beyond issues with other people is to thank God for them, to go constantly before the Father with their name and say, thank you for that person. Paul and Silas were thanking God for we don't know exactly what, but they were singing hymns, probably things that David wrote from the Old Testament. They had joy in the middle of that. Their backs were laid open. He's a Roman citizen. He could have appealed to his rights, and Paul chooses not to do that. The next day he mentions it in passing. Is this how you treat all, Roman citizens, Roman-born citizens, those that were really here in society? And that got their attention. But he takes that. Why? Because he wants to share in the sufferings of Christ, but even in the midst of that, he's got joy. And that's an incredible thing. So, Jesus unlocks all of those things. He also unlocks your purpose in life. Have you ever met people or been that person, people in your family who are locked up, they're bottled up, they're kind of shut down, not really trusting? Maybe they're kind of holding back. You always feel like, I was accused of this by a friend one time, that I was always the guy that, kept people kind of at a distance. It's fun to be vulnerable. It's fun to learn about opening up. It's fun when God is in your life to be able to share. Now, for some people, that's scary. They get scared when you start talking and you start sharing things and you start sharing vulnerabilities or pains that you have in your life, because we want it to be kind of happy. How you doing? Fine. How you doing? Fine. We say that all the time. But then there are those people that won't let you get away with that. And they really ask and they look and they ask you, how, really? And those are good things. I would argue that unless and until we come to know Jesus, we'll never really know ourselves. You will never really know yourself, and you will never really know other people until you know Jesus. Why? Because he is the key that will unlock that for us. People pursue all kinds of the wrong things. Jesus once asked the question, what will a person give in exchange for their soul, this priceless, eternal thing? Evidently, all kinds of things. Give my youth, give my character, give my money, I'll give my time, give my reputation. We know people who give all these things away. What are they looking for? They're looking for what only Jesus can provide, what only he can provide, because the things that he calls sins are not just, again, the fun list that he wants us to stay away from. Why? Because he loves us. He sets parameters. He sets limits on our behavior because it's good for us and because he loves us. Just like we do for kids. We don't let them do whatever they want. When they're little, they'd play in the street, run naked, eat cotton candy. They would just do, they would play with plug-ins and do all sorts of things that were bad for them. Yeah, they would. Jesus, the key, he also unlocks the truth. 2 Corinthians 4:4, Paul says, the God of this age has blinded the minds. That's an interesting way of putting it. Blinded the minds of the unbelieving so they can't see. But when someone comes to Jesus, the veil of the mind is lifted. And then we can think more clearly. We can see things more clearly. And we can understand that without Jesus, it's going to be impossible. If a person is not a Christ follower, there's not agape, the ability to forgive someone for something, to let it go, to not claim you're right because they did something bad to you. It's not within the realm of possibility for those who aren't Christ followers. Agape, selfless concern for someone else. We can manage to like someone else. We can manage to brush things off or say, no, that's okay. We can do those things as a human without the Spirit of God. But to really forgive, to really love, to really cherish, to really honor people, we cannot do that without knowing Jesus. He is the key to that in our lives. So he unlocks all of those things, but also he locks up some things. We said that keys grant access, but they also deny access. What does the key that is Jesus lock out for us? He locks Satan's control out of your life. He locks Satan's control out of your daily experience. Sometimes you may feel overwhelmed. Sometimes you may feel like I can't help it. I did it again, I said it again, I thought it again, and it feels overwhelming, like I can't do anything about it. What I would read in Scripture is that we have help that other people don't have, that we have strength that other people don't have, and he locks Satan out of this. After Jesus' temptation in the wilderness, he says, be gone. That's it. I've let you be this far, but no more. It says also in Scripture that we resist the devil and he will flee from us if we resist. But we're not taught how to do that. We don't talk about that a lot. And so some Christians just fall to the same sins over and over and over. And it doesn't have to be that way. Speaking of sin, Jesus locks out the ultimate power and control that sin has over our lives. We aren't pawns in some cosmic game. We have the ability to give ourselves voluntarily. We've been given free will as humans. And we can exercise that in wonderful and terrible ways. And we choose both of those. All you have to do is look at Facebook, read the news, and you see horrible ways that people choose to use it, and sometimes wonderful ways that people choose to use what God has given us. The ability for us to choose for him and completely give ourselves to him, he gives us his Spirit. And it talks about power, dunamis, the word for dynamite in the Bible. And that kind of power we have inside us, just like Jesus had that raised him from the dead. And we'll talk more about that in 2 weeks. We aren't slaves of sins anymore. He locks away the eternal consequences of our sins, and we get to embrace heaven now, and we also get to avoid hell. And I'll be honest, as a kid, how many of you came to Christ before you were the age of 15? As a kid, there's only so much I can think about as a 15-year-old, you know? I mean, now that I'm a tad older than that, I've had more life. I got more under my belt in more ways than one. But more experience, more life. And I can think about things. And to be honest, when I was a little kid and I heard that and I saw other people come to Jesus and I saw the good confession given and people baptized into Christ, I thought about hell. I don't want to go there. I don't want to be a part of that. And to be honest, that was the principal motivator for me. As I grow older, I realized that the avoidance of hell is kind of just a natural byproduct of giving myself completely to Jesus. It's not the thing. It's not the thing I'm shooting at or the thing I'm aiming at anymore. What I'm aiming at is to try to become as much like Jesus as I can. And in order for that to happen, I have to continually give myself to him. and I have to have him help me root out the things. We said the potter in Jeremiah 18, the potter in the clay, when he's making that, he has to pick out the things that are bad and make us smooth and make us usable. And he can, and he will, and he does. Jesus locks up fear and anxiety. He says, in this world, you're going to have trouble. You will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. Jesus is the one that says, don't be afraid. By his death and his burial and his resurrection, Jesus beat the worst thing for us. When he came, he said, at the very first, I saw the people sitting in darkness who were held captive by the fear of death all their lives. That's how he comes, and that's how he starts, and that's what he says in the very beginning. The fear of death is for all of us, but Jesus locks that out for us. If he's taking care of all of those things, if he holds the keys to death and the grave, then do you think he can't handle whatever it is that you're going through? Trouble in a relationship, trouble at work, financial trouble. The hardest things that we have to carry. If Jesus has beaten all of this, then he can confidently say to us, I came that they might have life. The thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy, he says in John 10:10. Then he says, I've come that they may have life and have it abundantly. Not just pie in the sky and waiting until I die, but you can start. You have that reward here and now. Improved relationships, a sense of who you are, joy, peace. All of that is available to us here and now. So we don't have to think of it as something there and then. I want to share you a passage, share one more passage with you. It's not very long. It's in John chapter 20. And it has to do with the locked door. On the evening of that first day of the week when the disciples were together with Jesus, the doors were locked for fear of the Jews, and Jesus came and stood among them. Peace be with you. Kind of an important thing to say to those who were scared to death and locked in a room and see the man that was just killed a few days before this. After he said this, he showed them his hands and his side. The disciples were overjoyed when they saw the Lord. Then skip down to 24. Now Thomas, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, we've seen the Lord. But he said to them, unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger in where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe it. A week later, his disciples were in the house again. Thomas was with them this time, and the doors were locked. And Jesus comes and stands among them and says, peace be with you. Then he said to Thomas, put your finger here and see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe. Thomas said to him, my Lord and my God. Then Jesus told him, because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. That passage tells me that Jesus is thinking about us. I haven't seen the risen Jesus in the same way that they saw him in that room that day. Neither of you. But I have seen Jesus in the lives of those that belong to him whenever they sacrifice time or money, whenever they sacrifice of themselves and say, I'll be there and I'll meet you. I'll talk with you. Sacrifice whenever there is a need. Sacrifice when I see people minister to one another and to those who are outside of this. People want all kinds of tips and tricks to unlock life. Money, power. Just tell me the few things I need to do, what stocks I need to invest in, because if I do that, then I'll have all the money I need and I won't have to worry, right? Well, Jesus says to a man that thought like that, this very night your life will be required. You don't know it yet, but today is your last day. So it isn't there, and it isn't in any of the things that we've talked about for the last few weeks. He locks things away, and he opens things up. When it comes to life, forgiveness of sin, meaning and joy and purpose and truth, there is one key that opens up those things, and his name is Jesus. But you've got to ask for the key, and the cost is very high. It's all of you. But the benefits far outweigh the cost. Jesus is that master key, and it's incredible. The great need for me and for you and everyone that you know is for Jesus. He is the key to it all. You read a book or you do something else and you say, maybe when you were in class in high school or college, the key to understanding this is, and then they give you the key. Here's the sermon again as we close. The key to understanding yourself, the key to understanding life, the key to understanding those around you, the world that we live in, his name is Jesus. As we apply him in the things that seem locked up. There are tumblers and things in our lives that go up and down, and things open up. If you've been closed down, he can open those things up for you. If you haven't experienced that forgiveness in Jesus, he's who you need. If you have, and you've grown kind of comfortable with that, then you need to reevaluate, because this is a thing that is life and death. We got to go all in. Jesus said, he told them, anyone who commits a sin is a slave of sin, but you'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. He was speaking to a group of people that said, we've never been slaves of anyone. We've never been locked up. We've never been tied up. And Jesus says, if you commit a sin, if you do things that God has said is bad for you, yes, you are. And he calls himself the only cure for that. I don't know where you are with all this. As I grow older in the faith, I find myself reflecting and thinking on the identity of Jesus. I want to know him, and I want to know him better. And then I want to be like him as much as I can. God's got work to do. And then I want other people to know him. Not that hard, is it? We want everybody to know him, because Jesus said, go everywhere and tell everyone about who I am. Teach them the things that I've taught you. Baptize them into me, and I'll be with you forever and ever. That's the sermon. I don't know what you need to do with it. If you want to talk about it, then let's get together and talk about it. If there's people in your family that you can do that with, that's fine. If you don't have someone for that, I'm glad to serve in that role. What are you going to do with Jesus? That's the role. Let's pray.